Hey there. Ready for a deep dive? We're tackling Pegasus this time. You sent us this intriguing piece from Soul Cruiser, all about him. And wow, it really revealed some sides to this whole winged horse thing I never even considered before. Like, okay, we know the basics.
Right.
But this is going way deeper than just, oh, horse with wings.
Oh, absolutely. He's way more than just a pretty face on a coffee mug. What always gets me is how deeply Pegasus is woven into everything. Our stories, our symbols, it goes way back. And this blog post, it really digs into the WHY of that, those surprising links, to creativity, to inspiration, even to some of the, riskier sides of what we're capable of.
And speaking of surprising, can we just talk about how W. Pegasus gets here in the first place? Like, the guy emerges from Medusa's blood after Perseus takes her down. That's not your average birth announcement.
It's pretty intense, right? I mean, you've got this image of something so powerful, so beautiful, springing from a creature that everyone was terrified of. But here's the thing about mythology. Those details, they're never random. Medusa, for all her monstrousness, she represents something very primal. It's a raw, untamed, feminine power. So when Pegasus is born from that, it's almost like saying, even from the most destructive force, something incredible can come out of it.
Ooh, I like that. It really makes you think about those times in your own life where you have this huge breakthrough, but it's only after going through something really difficult to get there. Like, we almost need that friction to make something new.
It's like that saying, no mud, no lotus.
Exactly.
We learn so much from those really intense, difficult experiences, I think.
Now, most people, when they think of Pegasus, they think Zeus's ride. This majestic steed soaring across the sky, got the thunderbolts in tow. Which, okay, pretty impressive. But you're telling me there's even more to it than that.
Oh, so much more.
Yeah.
See, Pegasus, he's what's known as a psychopomp.
A psycho what now?
Psychopomp.
Okay, I'm going to need you to break that down for me.
You give it like this, a bridge between worlds. He's not just a mode of transport for Zeus. He's actually guiding souls and messages back and forth between the divine and us here.
So it's not just about giving Zeus a lift. It's about this connection to something much, much bigger.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so cool is that this whole psychopomp idea, this bridge, it speaks to something really deep in us as humans. Like, we crave that connection to something beyond ourselves, to tap into a power we don't fully grasp. It's those moments, right? When an idea pops into your head out of nowhere, a flash of insight, almost like Pegasus is whispering it to you.
Oh, I like that. Pegasus, the ultimate inspiration giver. It's like those times when you get this amazing idea and you're like, wait, where did that come from?
Exactly. It's that connection to something beyond the everyday, bringing something extraordinary into being.
And speaking of bringing things into being, we got to talk about Pegasus and that famous spring, Hippocrene. Soul Cruiser mentions it too, this idea that one hoof stomp from this winged horse and bam, inspiration on tap.
Such a vivid image, isn't it? And it really gets to how we view creativity, I think. This hidden spring bubbling up from deep within the earth. It's like a metaphor for our own subconscious, right? All those thoughts and feelings we don't always see. And then Pegasus, he's the catalyst, the force that lets us tap into all that.
It's funny, though, because we tend to, at least I do, link Pegasus specifically to poetry, but Soul Cruiser points out he's actually tied to the Muses, and they were in charge of all art forms, weren't they?
It's easy to get stuck on that one image, right? Winged horse, flowing mane, must equal poetry.
Right.
But you're spot on. It's the Muses' connection that broadens it all out. That wellspring of inspiration, tapping into something beyond ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not limited to just words on a page.
So whether you're writing a symphony or just trying to come up with a creative dinner plan, Pegasus has got your back.
Maybe not everything, but I see what you mean. It's the universality of it.
Yeah.
We all have this capacity for creative thought, for those aha moments, for seeing the world differently. And that's where things get really interesting. Especially
when you consider those wings, right? I mean, lots of mythical creatures, they've got wings. But Pegasus, he really RCKS them.
You're not alone, Those wings, they represent something we all long for. Freedom, transcendence, the ability to soar above limitations. Like, have you ever been so engrossed in a project you completely lose track of everything else? That feeling of being in the zone. That's Pegasus.
That's so true. I was just reading about athletes who use visualization, and they were talking about reaching that same flow state, pushing past their perceived limits. And it got me thinking, maybe these themes with Pegasus, they're bigger than just art or creativity in the traditional sense. What do you think?
Absolutely. Anytime we push past those self-imposed boundaries, right? Whether it's in sports, relationships, even how we solve a problem at work, there's a bit of Pegasus in that. That willingness to embrace a new way of seeing things, to, dare I say, take flight.
Okay, but before we fly too far off on this, we have to talk about Bellerophon. He's the hero who actually manages to tame Pegasus, talk about the ultimate wingman, but it doesn't end well for him. So what's the lesson there?
Ah, Bellerophon. His story is fascinating because it shows us both sides of the Pegasus coin. On one hand, you've got this winged horse helping us overcome obstacles, tap into strength we didn't know we had, achieve the impossible even. But then there's that other side. When Bellerophon tries to ride Pegasus all the way to Mount Olympus, trying to become a god himself, well, that's where it all goes wrong.
Tried to get a little too big for his britches.
Precisely. Yeah. And I think that's the cautionary part of the myth. It's this idea that we don't truly control this creative force. We can connect with it, learn from it, even be guided by it.
Yeah.
But dominate it, possess it. That's when things go sideways.
It's true, though, that whole thing about not trying to control the creative force. It's like Pegasus is this wild animal, right? We can learn to work with him, be inspired by him, but trying to put a leash on it, recipe for disaster.
Wild animal, that's a great way to put it. It's about respecting the power, understanding its nature. And maybe that's why even today, that image, it still grabs us,
No, I totally get it. I mean, think about it. Pegasus is everywhere. You got your coffee cups, your sports teams. I swear I saw a cheesy keychain at a gas station the other day. Why do you think that is? Why does this one symbol still resonate so much, even now?
It's like we still crave what he stands for, even if it's deep down. That untamed spirit, the ability to just break free from the everyday, to connect with something magical, something bigger than us. In a world that's always telling us to stay practical, to color inside the lines. Pegasus, he reminds us there's another way.
To just let go and create and soar.
Exactly.
It's not like we're all going to run out and try to capture a winged horse. It's more about tapping into that feeling,
Exactly. It's about wanting that fresh outlook, that new perspective.
Yeah.
Like you were saying with those athletes, right? Tapping into that flow state. That's Pegasus too. It's not always literal wings, but it's the ability to push past those limitations, become our best selves.
Okay, but I gotta ask, if we could fly with Pegasus, where do you think he'd take us? What's out there, creatively or otherwise, that we haven't even dreamed of yet?
Now that is the question, isn't it? What happens when we really embrace that potential? What amazing things could we create? What problems could we solve? The beauty we could bring into the world.
Makes you think. See, that's what I love about these myths. They might be ancient stories, but they get you thinking about your own life in a whole new way.
Absolutely. They're like these mirrors, reflecting our deepest desires, our fears, all of it, reminding us of the power we all have inside. And sometimes that's all it takes, right? A little nudge, a whisper from a winged horse to set us on our own journey.
It's funny you should say that because it reminds me of that saying, the sky's the limit, but what if there are footprints on the moon? Pegasus kind of shows us we should be shooting for those footprints. Huh?
Exactly. He embodies that, doesn't he? That refusal to let anything squash our sense of wonder.
And to think it all started with that Soul Cruiser post you sent over. Who knew we'd end up on the moon with Pegasus?
That's the beauty of these deep dives, right? You start with this one little thread and it just unravels into this whole tapestry.
Speaking of tapestry, it makes me think of how intricate these myths are. We've just scratched the surface with Pegasus, and look at us. We're already thinking differently about creativity, inspiration, our own potential even.
And that's what's so great about myths. They're not just stories. They're like these conversations that just keep going and going, through generations even.
It's true. Every time you come back to one, it's a chance to ask those big questions all over again. So, as we're getting ready to wrap up this deep dive, I have one last question for you, and it's the one we posed at the very beginning. If Pegasus could take you on a flight, where would you go? What would you create along the way?
What a beautiful thought to end on. I think I'll leave that one with our listeners to ponder.
Me too. Because sometimes the most inspiring journeys are the ones we take in our own imaginations. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. It's been amazing.